And just a little break. Let's just say we're welcoming Konstantin to the channel here. I'm sure some of you will know Konstantin from the interviews that we run on the channel regularly.
Hey.
Hello, Konstantin. Nice to meet you.
Nice
Howdy,
to meet you.
friends. How to meet you? Well, I've met most of you virtually. Most of your work. Fantastic to meet you finally. Thank you for having me.
We've got Yuri joining in just a second, and a couple of
jump
guys
out.
here. You're
I'll
jumping out. You're going to your
See you
evening
later.
meal.
Nice to meet you all. Nice to meet you, Greg.
Sean,
Hey, Sean, we'll be talking, buddy. Thank you.
I've got to run too. I've got to get to the airport soon.
You got to get to the airport as well. So we got a few.
Jason, nice to
joining and a
meet
few
you. Let's
dropping.
connect in the future, man. Appreciate you.
Good to see you guys. Take care. Oh, Yuri, привет.
And here we have.
Привет. Пока-пока.
Пока.
Пока.
Fantastic. Yuri, Konstantin, Greg, three fabulous people
Hey,
here
everyone.
in the room.
Hello, Yuri. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Jonathan, you got quite a party here.
It's yeah. I mean, it's not one of those chat lines, not quite that, but I've been going for a few hours. We've had lots of fascinating people popping in and out. And we just lost Yuri. We'll get him back. Last time this happened, it was his cleaner unplugged the Wi-Fi. So hopefully that's not happened this time. We did a live stream and he disappeared. And it was, the cleaner, pulled the plug on him quite literally. He's back. Here he is.
I'm back. The button's here, man. You press a button and just sends you right out.
Well,
I thought this is great. It's been a while since there's been a good marathon on. So
this is it, and we've carved out an hour here where I think we're going to tackle some interesting topics. I mean, Greg is another Russian speaking here and very close observer of what's happening there. And I think we were going to talk about things like energy, and we were going to talk about the cannibalization of the Russian economy. So we've got a whole hour, to go through this sort of weighty issues, but it's part of a bigger thing. We're raising money for trucks. See it on the screen there. Those trucks get, painted, done up. They get steel plates put in key parts, and they help save lives. They're not a weapon as such, but they do enable people to help them be resilient and be evacuated when required from the front and all this kind of stuff. So it's all about that. But I'm hoping people will be thrilled to see Yuri and Konstantin and Greg in one place at one time. You haven't spoken before, have you? I think you're all. Have you interacted before?
I've watched their stuff and appreciate all of it, but no, this is our first time meeting virtually, personally.
right. Yeah, same here, Konstantin. It's a pleasure and honor to meet you, and Greg, it's very nice to meet you as well. I think this is just Jonathan. Thank you for, I think an important part of this independent media is just to connect people, and kudos to you for doing the fundraiser and for connecting people as well.
There's lots of
honor is
effort,
mine.
yeah.
Thank you so much. I've seen your work. I appreciate it very much as well. Big fan since, I don't know, 2017, something like that.
One of your early fans there.
Yes. I
Thank
saw you
you.
first at the Silicon Valley Voice, Mikhail Portnov. Yes, I remember that.
Yes, he has actually become a regular guest. We started to do a stream together now because it seems like we vibe well together. And these days, looking at things with a little bit of humor doesn't hurt. So thank you. And I really appreciate all your work. And Konstantin in particular, I love the fact that you found a way to connect with English-speaking audience, and your expertise and your knowledge of the subject, all of it works together so well that people follow you and listen to you, and you deliver great information. I think it's really wonderful. So thank you.
Trying to do my best. Thank you.
And that's an interesting thing, because I think what attracts people to all three of you is a kind of authenticity, and I think even if people don't agree necessarily with everything you have to say, because that's never going to be the case, I think if you can get them through a certain level of authenticity, and show you're open to sort of changing your mind or taking other points of view on board, I think that's one of the critical things, and I think that's what's most powerful, Constant, about what you do, is that quite clearly over the years you're constantly examining and re-examining, points of view, and whether it be historical mythology and so on. You're constantly looking and say, okay, well, this is the information I've got, but is it the best information? Is there something new that can challenge it? That's not an easy process to do, and it might appear you make it look quite easy, but actually it takes a lot of mental effort, a lot of hard work, a lot of research, and it's quite a brave thing to be able to challenge your own preconceptions. I mean, how do you see it?
First of all, it takes a lot of emotions. Hard work, we have all used to hard work. We have all worked hard all our lives, But what's the most important about my work is that obviously it takes all my time. I monitor constantly what's going on in Russia, with Russia. I do not concentrate on military stuff. I'm very far from military. I'm not a military guy. I don't know anything about it, but I'm an economist, and I'm Russian. I lived in Russia for a long time. I spent 20 years working for a large corporation building power plants in Russia, and what I'm seeing, the transformation of my country, that is very personal. That is taking toll on me, because I'm seeing the demise of everything that I lived in, I loved, it was my country, my home. Now I'm kicked out. I take everything that happens there personally. I understand that Russians need to take responsibility and repent for what they've done. I'm not seeing that happening, and I'm trying the best I can to just show how I see things at my angle. And Jonathan, to be honest with you, I don't really care much if some people don't like my point of view or disagree with my point of view, because I'm just speaking my mind and my heart. That's all.
I have kind of a similar approach, because I'm originally from Russia, but I've lived most of my life in the United States, and my identity, really, I consider myself to be an American from Russia. And when I get accused of being inauthentic, as in somebody else's shill, it usually comes in form of, oh, you're a Democrat. Oh, you get money from, I don't know, Soros, State Department, somebody, whoever is supposed to give money to Democrats, supposedly gives money to me. And I explain to people that, I am doing this because I like doing this. Yes, I'm a local elected official. I've been elected to 2 different positions. I've been on city council, and I'm now in county government. But those are actually nonpartisan positions. And in the United States, it doesn't work quite the same way, where I'm not supporting party line because I'm a Democrat, all of that kind of a dynamic. There's a party that reflects my values, and then there's a party that doesn't reflect my values. I pick the party that reflects my values, and that's how it works. So I think dealing with those kinds of educational issues and explaining to people that, really, I just I'm doing this for likes. I'm doing this for, yes, nice to have viewership, but I also like to do it because in Russian, I really don't even have anyone around me who speaks Russian. So I like being able to speak Russian. That's kind of almost like a lost art form. In spite of all the terrible things that are being done with it these days, Russian language is pretty cool. It's got a lot of variety, and it's got cool sounds in it, and I like to use it. And so it's all me.
And Greg is another. You've lived and worked in Russia, and as I say, we're all.
I'm 53. I started working in Russia first in 1994, so it's 31 years of experience. In 98, started working in Ukraine, and I learned the Russian language. It was a sabachobi tropami, but I learned it, and it was extremely difficult. That one was for you, Yuri. Some of the beauty of the Russian language there, and but the reality is, it gives me perspective. So what I do after working in Russia for that many years, and then starting in Ukraine, and then really focusing on Ukraine, and now since the full scale invasion, I've been my next time over will be my 17th month running aid and helping on the front lines, and I just see my role as one that tries to massage the truth out of the Russian narrative, the Russian language, the precedents that have been laid down for decades that we are now seeing come to fruition, whether it be the propaganda. But at the same time, I'm also trying to unwind the Ukrainian narrative. I work directly with military. We have a nonprofit there. And you put all of that together, and I'm trying to interpret a language, whether it be Russian or Ukrainian, that most of the world does not know. So it's one thing to read somebody's tweet, and it's another thing to see something, just verbatim, like translated, or you're reading the subtitles. But ladies and gentlemen, reading subtitles or seeing a tweet that's translated by Google, there are so many times you will miss the actual meaning of what is trying to be communicated, and then you will be off in left field because you've went verbatim with what was translated, but it has nothing to do with the statement. So that's what I'm trying to do. And then, of course, like Konstantin said, he's on the economic side, the Russia, he's inside Russia. For me, I'm now a majority of the time, or half the time, inside Ukraine, and a lot of work with the military trying to bring that picture into it as well. So but this is the beauty of it, Jonathan. You see all the different pieces of the puzzle come together here, and you put all of this together, and you can get a complete picture of what's happening.
This is it, and I think it's useful to be able to, in some sense, understand some of the propaganda. So I don't think it's healthy to actually watch the full output, but it is quite useful sometimes to be able to look at various commentary, to look at various, some of the stuff that comes out of Telegram. I mean, my sources, I don't tend to go to primary sources because I just don't have the time, but I'll go to people that I trust. I mean, I quote Michael Naki an awful lot, and Vladimir Milov, which Konstantin and I, talk about, and there's a few others like Partnikov and a few others who are Ukrainians who broadcast in Russian. And actually, it's very useful to get that concentrated information, because listening to Western sources, I'd have to listen to 10, 20 times more material to get that same level. And then you're constantly sifting between the bits that you think are correct and the bits that are, imposing a Western framework onto their analysis. And it's just not the same quality of material and insight. It's just not.
My partner Zhenya and I were under the ballistic missile attack in Odessa that took out the Hotel Bristol a few months ago, and we had just come around the corner when the first missile came in. And then what do? We go to help, of course, but the double tap came. So then we ran behind a building, and then the people were screaming, "Here comes another one." It was a massive attack, if you guys remember that, a couple months ago, in the Hotel Bristol, and we're tucked in, trying to stay alive. And my partner Zhenya, this is directed to your statement there, Jonathan, is on the phone, and he says, "We can't move from this spot. Stay right here." And people are running around like crazy. I said, well, he goes, "I will tell you when we can go." I said, "Well, who are you talking to?" He goes, "I'm talking with the air defense commander over Odessa." So you're connected. Like, I'm not waiting for a telegram feed or something. Zhenya's directly on the phone, communicating directly with the military, going, "There's one more coming. The recon drone is still overhead. We can't move." And so it's nice to be able to have sources, but that comes from a lot of investing and time. So Yuri and Konstantin, of course, we had a Russian American and a Russian, but Jonathan, I kudos to you, man, for all the time you're spending inside Ukraine building relationships, because that's ultimately how you get to truth.
Greg, may I add something? I am listening to you right now, and my heart starts bleeding because I've been to Odessa. I spent 1 year in Odessa. I worked for a Russian-Ukrainian company in the past, and I have tons of friends there. And I stayed at Bristol. I didn't know it was hit. I have a lot of personal memories there. Well,
I'm sorry
it's a
to
tragedy.
bleed your heart right now. I stayed there also. And Konstantin, if you really want to know the truth that night, it's better for me to tell these stories when Jonathan Pierce isn't on here. But that night, Janie and I were we were going to stay at the Bristol because we stay there quite often. It's in the logistical area where we need to be, where we're working and helping. And we just had a feeling that night, let's say somewhere else. And you go bring a tear to my eye because, man, we could have been killed that night. And we decided to go out and take a walk. And we were staying about half a kilometer from the Bristol. And we were going over that way because we were going over for meetings in that area. And we turned the corner and boom, it exploded right in front of our eyes. And it's a beautiful place, the stairway that goes up the middle of the Bristol. And yeah, it's happening nonstop though, man.
I don't know what to
Nonstop.
say.
There's nothing to say.
There is
It's
It's
the
nothing
reality.
also
Yeah.
it's
Well,
also strategic, right? It's not just like, okay, it's a nice building, let's take it out. They also would have known, for instance, that the Black Sea Security Conference, all the guests stayed at the Bristol the previous year, and that conference was pretty successful, and it was due to be scheduled for a second time, and everyone was booked to stay at the Bristol. So again, this is a strategic purpose, which is like, here's a conference of movers and shakers and influential people. Right. Well, they wouldn't know whether there's deposit paid down on that by the organizers or not. I think in the end there was. But it's like, it's strategic because let's take out this place. We don't take it out when all these, lords and advisors are in there because that's a diplomatic incident. But let's take it out ahead of time just to demonstrate that we know and disrupt kind of plans. So unfortunately, yeah, there's some logic behind it as well.
You're spot on. That night specifically, the only diplomat that was there was a Norwegian person that works there with Odessa. I think it was Norwegian. It was, but that was a night, just like you said. If it had been another night, you could have had complete delegations there.
They're rebuilding it, and they'll rebuild everything.
Oh, yes.
But it is kind of horrific, obviously.
If I can say a couple of words about the news environment, and the news sources, which I think is a really important point, because for me, I mean, honestly, I speak like, let's say, perfect Russian, but I actually never been to Odessa. But I know Bristol. I've heard of Bristol because it's a known building, it's a known hotel, it's a known entity for anybody that's been paying attention. But for me, I'm like, I sit in the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin forests, basically. My town city is 35,000 people. I'm trying to piece together the world that's out there from the sources that I have available. And what I find is that certain sources become less and more trustworthy, and I have to constantly shift around and see if I can, because, for instance, what's going on with Washington Post is one of the more obvious examples where they were more trustworthy, but now they're less trustworthy. But I'm fascinated by how I find Russian propaganda to be more relevant now than it used to be, in a way, for me as a consumer of news, because Russia has such an outsized influence in American politics now that I feel like it's important for me as a news consumer to take in Russian perspective and see what it is that those crazy old people are saying, because it never really, I felt, used to matter so much.
I completely concur. I when I see, and of course Konstantin's inside Russia, but I'm
not.
He's
Greg,
not. He's
I'm
not
not.
actually. Oh no.
I'm sorry.
I'd be locked up. I left Russia. In
You left. My
2022.
apologies.
Oh, yeah.
My apologies.
Can you reveal what country you're in?
Yeah, absolutely. Uzbekistan. Everyone knows that. I speak. I tell it online, and I'm being followed by the Russian secret police, so they know.
Ethnic
I have no
Russian,
problem
yeah.
speaking.
Okay.
Ethnic Russian GRU operating throughout, Central Asia, and
I think they're imported. They're from Moscow. They're members
from Moscow,
of the
yeah.
Russian embassy. I think that's
exactly,
or some organization that is based here in Uzbekistan. So,
by the way, I've been there, and I love the plov from Uzbekistan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But regardless, I find myself just like you, Yuri. When I'm looking for the story and or to bring confirmation, I've got my Ukrainian friends and my sources that I trust completely, 100%. But then I find myself just jumping over really quick. I want to see what TASS is saying. I want to see what RIA is saying. I want to see, and it's just interesting. And I use that to try to bring a complete picture to topics that I share.
Бажаємо міцного здоров'я. Ми бійці батальйону безпілотних систем Black Raven 93-ї бригади Холодний Яр виконуємо бойове завдання на Константинівському напрямку в Донецькій області. Для їх успішного виконання наш підрозділ має потребу в пікапах для виїзду особового складу на позиції, евакуації, своєчасного підвозу боєприпасів, дронів та обладнання в район ведення бойових дій. Звертаємося до YouTube-спільноти Silicon Curtain та Джонатана особисто з проханням допомогти підтримати збір, а також до Car for Ukraine та Бандера Мобіль з проханням допомогти з купівлею, підготовкою та доставкою авто на фронт. Слава Україні! Героям слава!
You're on mute there, Yuri. I think you're muted.
I ended up, one of the things I started doing lately is because I keep, like, it seems like my occupation now is to be in Ukraine info space, speaking in Russian and explaining to them what American media says about different things and what's happening in America and kind of, you know, view from here. So it makes sense for me to read a lot of news. So I started reading news and reading articles that I find relevant to me as I'm preparing to appear somewhere. And there's people, you know, that like there's an audience growing for that because Voice of America is gone, because there's fewer sources. And so for me, being, you know, an amateur near volunteer is like, there's so much opportunity out there. There's nothing being covered. You can do so many different things. It's amazing. What a world.
Now, I wanted to turn to a couple of topics around energy as well, because this is shaping up to very much be an energy war this winter. And of course, there seems to be more capabilities on both sides. So we won't necessarily touch the military aspect because, you know, certainly Yuri, Konstantin, and myself are not sort of military experts on that. But this directly impinges on areas where certainly Konstantin is got his expertise, and that is energy. And coming up to winter, the economics of energy. This seems to me that this is going to be the centerpiece of, you know, the war of attrition that we're seeing. And of course, Ukraine has far more capabilities to strike. So we got the oil being taken out. We got fuel shortages. We've got thermal power plant in Belgorod now being hit twice. I think last time we spoke it was hit once, now it's twice. And, you know, just last night, I think in Ekaterinburg, a plant that produces, you know, energy industry components and nuclear components was hit. So this looks like this really is like hitting the facilities, hitting the logistics, and then hitting the ability to repair the damage of these facilities. This is where it seems to me this is going to shape up, and it's going to be really nasty, isn't it? And we already had Kiev big districts with no electricity this morning, hence a few people couldn't come on the channel. This is the energy war at this point.
Well, it's not just the energy war, but energy is a huge part of the war, and it's becoming a big problem for Russia. And, you know, I'm constantly getting news from Russia. I have like 100 news feeds, and I sit and monitor and look at them all the time and analyze and find what's significant. And then once you do that for a very long time, you start distinguishing trends. Okay, connecting dots, connecting some news together, perhaps some news from the past, some news happening now, current ones, and you kind of start seeing the trends. And I'm seeing a few trends, big ones. Well, and not the military trends. Okay, I'm not. I don't have any expertise on that. But I believe that Russia's fall will come from not from Ukraine's in the front lines. You know, it'll come from inside Russia. It'll come from economy shrinking and the political groups fighting more and more with each other for shrinking resources, and it'll just destroy Russian economy or hit it so bad, then the country won't be able to function any longer, and then the political shift will happen. And the
That's
more
happening,
I'm
isn't
looking
it?
at the situation, the more I'm seeing it. So there are two big trends right now that among Russian people, not the propaganda, that's different. There are also trends in what propaganda says. But among Russian people, what they're saying, this late summer and fall, there are two big things discussed everywhere. First is skyrocketing prices. A lot of people, well, most are concerned, and a lot are very scared because it comes to the point where people have harder and harder time affording food. And the second trend is this is going to be a very long and cold winter, and it has already started. And the gasoline shortages that are happening all over Russia now, and they're systematic. And the strikes on the heat power plant, electrical power plant in Belgorod, and the Belgorod governor, he just came out a couple of days ago. I'm going to be covering it soon, and actually made an address to the Belgorod residents saying, well, get ready. We have hard times ahead. And that's what I think. I think everyone has very hard times ahead. It was bad enough without strikes. So you got to understand that 3.5 years, less maintenance has been done that's supposed to be done because fewer men in the power plants, in energy infrastructure, really, not just the power plants. Fewer men, less financing, less money, and foreign equipment is gone. You don't have access to expertise of the manufacturers of the turbine, GE, Siemens. You don't have chief engineers come and look at their equipment, at their turbines. You don't have spare parts. You don't have special tools. Okay, of course, Russians have been able to source some, but not the whole thing that is required. Okay, and at this point, this is winter number 4, and it's getting pretty bad. Okay, and on top of that, you start having the strikes. That's going to put tremendous pressure on those power plants who are still operating. And I think it's going to be a very long and cold winter, and that could be a huge hit to regime. I'm not saying it's going to be a deal breaker, but that's gonna, in Russia, they say, never rock the boat. Okay, that's gonna rock the boat a lot. Будет раскачивать лодку.
And is there a cascade effect? For your understanding of how energy grids and systems work, the odd power plant here and there might affect a region like Belgorod, but could there be a point where there is some kind of systematic or cascade effect where you take something out and it has, knock-on effects that are bigger than say, for instance, electricity shortages or knocking out thermal plants for heating systems, these kind of things?
If it is very hard winter and very cold winter, and I have a feeling it will be, because in Russia usually winters.
May I interject,
rotate.
Konstantin? May I interject one thing just so people understand?
Sure.
He's not talking about, in my opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong, Konstantin, he's not talking about the power systems going out and it's going to be cold. He's speaking about the weather. We're going to have a very difficult winter, which will then cascade into a number of issues that will follow. Is that how,
Well,
I'm understanding?
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay,
I'll add on to that.
Okay,
It's
great.
going to be a long winter. You see, the very harsh winter, very cold winter puts extra pressure on Russian power infrastructure, on substations, on power lines, on the power plants. And last winter was warm, so it means that there are chances this winter is going to be extra cold. Okay, and that's already bad enough. But it's just not so much about not having electricity, Jonathan, as not having heat.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be the killer, because you can live in the dark. Most Russians, I don't know the statistics, but I would say over 80% of all Russians, they live in large apartment blocks, and they have central heating. And that heat is generated in large power plants and is supplied via pipelines, heat pipelines. Okay, and if you don't have electricity, I mean, you can, granted, your fridge, is off and your food is spoiled, but you're not going to freeze to death. But if you don't have heat, then there's a problem. And yes, there will be cascades. But again, electricity, you can reroute. If one of your big facilities or small, whatever, power plants offline, Russian power grid is designed that way that certain parts of Russia can supply more energy in case a power plant is offline. Okay, so there is a agency called CDU, Центральное диспетчерское управление, that controls the electricity flow throughout Russian regions. Okay, so everything, it's not like the United States, different states are isolated. It's to a certain degree, it's all united. It's a united power grid. And electricity, yes, they can somehow find a solution. With heat, they can't. And that's where the biggest threat is. And then I think that's what's gonna hit hard Russia this coming winter.
Let me ask you a question, all of you. I guess I'd like to know your opinion, because I just had a conversation on my English language channel with Ben Hodges, who I know is a guest of Jonathan's, and I was kind of surprised, to be honest, because the consistent, so Ben Hodges takes a very strong stand that it's not about hitting Moscow. It's about hitting the oil refineries. And to me, I guess that represents a split in, is it more important to make Russian people in Russia really uncomfortable, or is it more important to bleed the regime dry of resources so that they couldn't finance the war? And which one is more relevant and important in order to bring war to an end, in your opinion?
Well, we argued this earlier with
Sorry, I wasn't
Pierce.
watching. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, this is pertinent, because I think we're going to have a different take on it again. And Jonathan Pierce came from 2 points of view. One was that there are certain legal complications here, that technically it's a war crime to hit purely civilian energy infrastructure, technically, but that's putting a very Western framework on. Also, he said, well, hang on a second, won't that unite Russian people? If you hit them hard and freeze them out, they'll start to unite behind the regime. I'm like, you're imposing a very Western framework on that entire thing, which is not necessarily correct in any way, because they're not going to react in the way that a Western electorate would. I quickly say, because I know you guys have got sort of more interesting answers than me, I'd say it has to be both, because where you have people who are so completely divorced from politics, where whatever evil they might participate in that's led by the regime, they can also say, oh, well, we had nothing to do with it. It's not our regime. We have no agency. We have no control. So it's very easy to participate and then divorce yourself and say, oh, no, that wasn't us. The Soviet Union, I mean, the conversations I had, well, what about the USSR and the occupation of Eastern Europe? Oh, that wasn't us. That we didn't do that. That was the Soviet Union. That's gone. So, we're fine.
Konstantin was speaking about in terms of that's what Konstantin was speaking about in terms of repentance.
But I say you have to degrade the military capability, but you also have to hit the people where it hurts. You have to deny their pleasures and privileges and indeed their essentials of life. Otherwise, they can carry on saying, look, it's not me, Gov. It's nothing to do with me, and I'm not going to take any kind of responsibility for it. But I'll pass over to Konstantin, because he knows this far better than I do. And
Russian people keep surprising me, Jonathan. And it almost seems like they are different people from people that I lived around back in Russia. I spent most of my life in Russia. They are so, very good word used, they are so divorced from the situation. They have built informational bubbles, emotional bubbles around them and their families. I've talked to so many Russians, and when I start asking them questions, and nothing radical, I just said, "What do you think? And have you heard of that? How do you think that is going to influence your life?" They shut me, off. "Oh, no, 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 no. We don't want to talk about. I don't know anything about it." I said, "Okay, let me tell you. I can explain. I know very well." "Oh no, please stop. Don't. I don't even want to know about that because it's gonna make me feel really bad. It's gonna hurt. It's gonna make me uncomfortable. I've even heard some people say, "I'm gonna go crazy if I learn all these things." Okay, and they understand that something tragic going on in Ukraine and something tragic is going on in Russia, because they understand that future of their children is getting erased right now. They understand that they're taking they're taking away education. They're somebody's erasing education system, healthcare system, raising taxes, killing small businesses. Economically, Russia is demising. I use that word and I mean it. Things are really bad, and year into the fourth year, this is it. We're seeing the train arrived at the station. That's the dead end. Okay, and the more of that is happening, the more Russians become divorced, because it's scary. It's scary to say, you know what, this is bad, and this is my responsibility, and I am also partially responsible for that. I'm paying taxes. This is my country. I vote for politicians. Unfortunately, not one person understands and realizes that. Okay, they absolutely refuse. Their position is, I have my eyes closed, I have my ears plugged, I don't want to know anything. It's not my fault. I don't make decisions. Decisions are made there. What can I do? And things like that. So if strikes continue, I don't know how to answer your question. I think that only complete breakdown on the Russian state, and we're seeing some parts of it already breaking down. For example, in multiple cities, there are problems with public transportation, and some Russians, I don't know what they're gonna do. They must walk to walk to work. They must walk, on their errands and so forth. Many can't afford food. I just learned that there is 30% deficit in the pension fund of Russian Federation. It means that some old people in Russia won't be getting paid on time, and they're not getting paid now much, just barely enough to survive, not even. And then their pensions will be delayed in the future. Okay, and only when it gets to the point where this is it, not everything barely works, okay, and Russians, that affects their lives directly, that that informational emotion bubbles, this chaos pokes through and affects them when they go to work, and they say, well, you know what, you're laid off because we can't sell any products that we produce. And he or she goes and can't find a job. Teachers, doctors, they get their payments delayed, the salaries delayed. When it gets to that point, then the boat will be rocking, and there's a possibility of changes.
And I think we'd be surprised. I think when people get to the absolute bottom rung of Maslow's kind of hierarchy, when they're at the point, I used to think of this in the 90s, right? And I used to despair that no one would stand up for anything. And the thought occurred to me that only when the last sausage or chunk of cheese has disappeared from the fridge, that's kind of when people, okay, now I actually have to say something. But it's that situation now. Unfortunately, you have to bring people to the point of the absolute necessities of life being fragile before I think anyone would take albeit the substantial risk for protesting.
Jonathan, I feel that in the battle between the TV and the refrigerator in Russia, TV crushed the refrigerator. There's there'll be nothing, no sausage in that fridge hanging out of that fridge, and those people are still going to be listening to the TV and following the directions, and because that's safer.
It's some of you're saying, and you're only imagining there's no sausage. You really do have a sausage, but yeah.
Can I add my 5 cents to that? You're right on, Yuri. You understand Russia very well. Currently, propaganda, the TV is winning over the fridge, and most likely, well, I don't see anything happening when people will actually stand up and go protesting. That's so far away that it's not in foreseeable future. My theory is that when the situation gets so bad that the win will come from the top, because there will be a take on the current regime by a certain group that suffers and that wants more power, that wants changes, that loses money. And I'm not talking about one oligarch or one general. That's going to be a group, because right now there are power group, elite groups in Russia. Okay, and once they do something, then people will see that happening, and they might rise just like what had happened in the USSR. Remember, the USSR didn't fall because Russian Soviet people stood up and said enough. No, GKChP, and they lost. Those generals who created the coup, they lost, basically. And once Yeltsin started winning, people flocked on the streets. And then even before, some didn't like that event. So only when a certain, perhaps black swan event happens, that can create political change in Russia. But I don't believe that fridge will actually... Well, fridge will rock the boat a great deal, and people will be angry, but not to the point where they will, rise.
Russians are incredibly resilient, if nothing else. But I'm wondering whether marrying these two ideas of strikes and Slovakia or elites rising up, or even generals who have huge amounts of money as well, let's face it, is there any... okay, I'm sure sanctions are being exhausted in terms of options there, but is there any kind of kinetic strikes that could happen against Russia that would hurt particular people? Do you know, are there any refineries that are owned by oligarchs rather than the state? Is there any, do you see where I'm going? Is there any options militarily?
You're bringing your Western kind of view to it maybe there, because everything reverts to the state to an extent.
Nothing is owned by oligarchs. Nothing is owned oligarchs. I mean, all the oligarchs who, well, the elite groups who own refineries, well, they basically oil is a very small business in Russia, so to speak. There are only like a handful of companies and a few people running it. Okay, Khodorkovsky was one of them, but he was ousted, and his company was stolen, and it became Rosneft, and then there's Lukoil, Bashneft, and Tatarstan, and that's pretty much it. So those oil companies, and they own all refineries. There are no independent refineries. One way or another, they're connected, okay? Because refinery cannot simply, if it's just independent, in Russia, it would not be able to get oil flow. Okay, it would be either bought or stolen. Well, annexed, in the previous years. So there are no independent oil refineries owned by the oligarchs, and not too many in Russia in the first place. I think there are around 40, less than 40, something like that.
What hurts them enough then to actually rise up?
Right, like maybe taking the winery from Medvedev in Italy, but that's sanctions,
No one cares about that. No one cares. You said that sanctions have been exhausted. I don't think so. I don't think that sanctions have actually worked well until recently. Look what Macron did with Russian oil tanker. Held it up in France, and this is it. This is a huge, big hit to Russian oil exporting industry. Okay, and a few tankers arrested and started investigated, then other companies, those companies and those Greek owners, who transport Russian oil, they'll think twice. Okay, it's a big world, and Russia is not the only country.
Yeah.
Okay, they have been making big bucks for the past 3.5 years, but there are other customers. There's other oil to ship. I have the answer for you, and this is my opinion. The strikes will not help. Well, they're helping in a way, but they're not going to be the cause of uprising, the cause of shift, of political shift, something happening. Food prices, that's what's going to happen. Increasing food prices will affect people, because the biggest trend right now is rising food prices. It's on everyone's mind right now. Okay. And the second is shortage of gas. What are we going to do? We can't pump the gas. We can't fill up our cars, and then it's our life is not the same anymore. It's not as convenient, And again, the shortages of the pumps, they influence prices. So, but the main thing that really causes disturbance inside Russians is food prices, because you can understand most Russians are so poor that they spend most of their money for food. Forget about the middle class; it's been destroyed.
What do they attribute the rise in? What do they attribute the rise in cost of food to, in their opinion?
It's a good question.
This is an especially bad harvest. This is an interesting one we're going to talk about in our discussion next week. This is one of the worst harvests of many, many years. So that's a contributing factor for sure.
And it's not just the harvest, actually. It's not just the crop yields, but also loads of other factors, according to some farmers that I was reading about. It's, the inflation of farm equipment and other, it's rather like in the US in many ways. There's this
and fuel, fuel prices also feed into agricultural prices.
The biggest hit Russian agriculture has taken has been the ban of buying foreign seeds.
Right.
And that's what minus 35% in most of the crops, because all seeds from the Netherlands, world's leader of genetic modification, they give a lot more yield than regular seeds that you use, and they stopped buying in 2023, and it usually takes 3 years for this genetic engineering to lose potency, and this is year number 3. So this is exactly what we're seeing. And of course, there's a huge, 2 other major factors. Less farmers. Look for those farmers in the front lines, probably in Ukrainian land. And factor number 3, expensive money. Russian farmers cannot take out loans any longer. Not at 29%.
Yeah, that was the other one. Yeah.
And there's an interesting one as well, because Jonathan's question actually is fascinating, because it also reflects how I think many European policymakers thinking, as if there's some magic lever that we can pull and we can somehow prompt a Western-style political response in Russia. They're transposing something that doesn't exist and won't work. Having said that, we're seeing this thing, and you've used this phrase for the last 3 years, which is just wait for the moment when resources get scarce and the regime needs to scrape together what it needs to continue the war and pay the Siloviki. You're going to see bulldogs fighting under a rug. Well, that moment has come, because we're seeing businesses being taken away forcibly from minigarchs and from these guys who nominally you would have thought had power in the system, or who you're relying on to have a political response. This is now showing that they really have no power, because their businesses are being stolen, stripped of assets, given to regime loyalists, or just stripped for whatever resource they've got. You've even got people in the so-called hierarchy who thought that they were immune to this, you've got people who are now being wrenched out of their positions and their little cozy position given to somebody else. So there's something interesting kind of going on there. There's a cannibalistic process going on that is perhaps more dangerous than
quite trying to project, though. I was trying to say, like, if I was Zelensky or if I was his commanders, like, have I exhausted all of the ideas, or not even remotely, but are there any options for striking things that could expedite
I would say
outside
starve
of the
the war
military
machine.
context?
I would say starve the war machine of resources, because then Putin will start to steal that off whoever he can. You know, they'll start to rustle it up from the civilian economy. So starving the war machine has a twofold impact. But Konstantin, what are you noticing about this cannibalistic
Konstantin,
process?
before you answer, while you're thinking with your eyes squinted and that great brain is cycling, I just figured out I hadn't pushed this to my channel. This conversation is so good. So if you're hopping in on my channel as well, we are doing a fundraiser for Cars for Ukraine, which is an organization I 1 million support. They are rock solid. And we also have a phenomenal panel right here with both the Jonathans, Fink and Pierce from Silicon Curtain ATP Geopolitics, as well as great experts, Konstantin and Yuri. It's just so here we go, guys, and back to you, Konstantin.
Although just before you answer, I do have to go to the cinema now. So yes,
you're great. It's gonna get even better now that Pierce is leaving.
This is the quickest like cameo appearance. Hi, bye. But I'd love to interview either of the other guests on here. If you're welcome, if you're wanting to come on to ATP Geopolitics, just let me know. But thank you for allowing me to.
You're about to be yanked off, aren't you? There, you're about to be pulled off stage by your. You know,
that was
go to the cinema.
Awesome euphemism there. That I was. Yeah. Anyway,
don't go there.
Yeah. Take care, everyone.
Jonathan. You know, we've spoken a lot. You're a brilliant mind. I agree on 99% of issues with you, not on this one. I think it's not wishful thinking, it's just too idealizing the situation that is going on. You're right. It might happen, and most likely it will happen, but not now. It hasn't started happening. Because look what's happening now. There is a war going on inside Russia for the businesses. As you see, about a year ago, I know that there was a list presented to Prosecutor General of Russia with 750 large companies on the list to be nationalized, basically to be stolen. And they're not stolen and given to the state as an asset. You know, they don't bring value to the state. They're stolen with one purpose: to change ownership. Because this is how it works. State acts according to the law. You know, they very odd laws. Okay, but still, there's a court makes a decision. A prosecutor general makes a move. You know, opens an investigation, gives case to the court. Court makes a decision to annex company, to take it back, to take control of it, and then a few months later, it's either leased or resold to new owners. Okay, so this war has been going on for about 2 years now, and it's intensifying, and we're seeing victims, and sometimes victims not just money. People don't lose money; they lose lives, they lose freedom. And what you are saying is going to happen when it's not the power agencies, not the siloviki against the businessmen. It's when siloviki against siloviki.
Mm-hmm.
It's when we're going to see the conflicts between them. That we know that the end is near. There are a lot of companies in Russia, and there are still a lot of work to be done for the Prokuratura, Prosecutor General, to annex more and more companies. Okay, and I don't see anyone protesting. I don't see anyone standing up and saying, look, what you've done to Kamenchik or Mashkovich or other businessmen. You know, that was just another news minutes ago. Was another large company stolen, or Galitsky or Tinkov. You know, that's not right. You know, you got to stop that. I haven't seen that happening. Not even close. Not even like, not anyone is even thinking about that. So it's not there yet.
I completely concur 100% with Konstantin. I have a lot of friends that live in Russia, and they're located in, of course, the Moscow area, St. Pete area, Nizhny Novgorod. You're talking about that north western area, the central area of the Moscow region, really. And we're not even close, guys, to the layered effect that is necessary to bring implosion to Russia. Striking, and as President Zelensky says, rightfully so, the Russian people need to begin to feel what we feel. I completely agree. It's accurate. Ukraine was hit extremely hard last night on the energy grid. And even warnings today from Lviv, from the mayor, we're not going to be able to turn the heating system on now for weeks, and it's going to be cold. So, you know, Ukrainians are feeling it. So, yes, the Russians need to feel it. The economy needs to feel it. But until you have a breakdown of that inner core, we're just going to keep banging against the same wall. And everything we're doing is working towards that, but it's not going to happen tomorrow. No way.
So I was going to say that, you know, as far as strikes, I mean, I agree with both Konstantin and Greg, because solid points. But I do feel that Jonathan brings a valid point too, because there's always more targets to strike. And I think it's important to acknowledge that should a Tomahawk hit Lubyanka or Ostankina, we're going to have some impact. And this is my question for you. Propaganda and like, is it the most important thing? Again, choices for the West to concentrate on providing as much rockets and weaponry to Ukraine as possible, and drone walls and technology and everything, or maybe it's worth spending a couple of bucks to rebuild an anti-Russian propaganda machine.
I was about to say exactly.
Define anti-Russian propaganda machine. Define
something that will provide people in Russia with information, because we see that this is something that this administration said is really not a good idea. We don't want to influence people to talk about democracy and stuff. Forget it. But
I got the answer to that.
Is it an important part of defeating Russia is to give people some information?
I've got the answer, and people aren't going to actually consume information if they don't want to hear it, which is what Konstantin said. So you have to patch it up in a way that is consumable, which is like sugaring the pill. And I've been saying this almost from day one, is what we should have done, and you may disagree with this, what we should have done is revived something like Kukli and paid a whole bunch of dissident satirists to create little TikTok versions of Kukli, viciously and scatologically vilifying the Russian leadership and the oligarchs
that would be my next
and the
channel.
propagandists.
Yes.
Yeah, but just go for satire, and you inject information through humor and have a really vicious guerrilla effort, and have some of it really hypersexual, hyper scatological, be absolutely brutal in the way that 18th century British political was brutal, in the way that Viktor Shenderovich was pretty freaking brutal, which is why NTV was bought up and shut down, because Putin hated it. He hated it and loathed it, and he realized the power of vicious satire to get to the truth in a way that no, sanctimonious, moralistic or analytic information will ever hit the target. I don't know, maybe I'm barking up the wrong tree, but
well, I will tell you this. You're talking about a complete narrative shift inside a controlled state. Let me give you my first example. My first run to the front line in a war zone, I had some dear friends from the state of Georgia who says, Greg, we respect you for doing that. We know your love for Ukraine, and let me send with you a security guy who is an expert, American special ops. He does security for senators, and let him just go with you because I'm really concerned. You've never been in a war zone like that. And I said, great. And he goes, we're paying for it. We'll send him. We just want to make sure you're okay. So this guy comes with me, supposed to be for 6 weeks. He makes it 3. He leaves because a missile flies over his head and he gets scared. But that's not the point I want to share. We get over in Kramatorsk and this guy looks at me, an American special ops war veteran who is a security guard for U.S. senators, looks at me and my partner Zhenya and goes, listen, you do realize Russia's right. I say, excuse me? He goes, you do realize there are bio labs here. This nation is horrible. I said, what nation? He goes, Ukraine. I said, then why are you here? He goes, they paid me to come take care of you. I don't care where I go to take care of you. But they're all wrong. You're fighting the wrong battle, man. I said, so you're telling me almost 30 years of experience. I know the culture, the language, the people, and you're going to tell me that you've read some TikTok and I'm wrong, but you're right? He goes, listen, these Ukrainians are evil. Russia's right. And that was an American, man. Okay. So you now try to break that through a Russian society with social media and that type of fortified wall. It's going to take time.
I don't know, because in the Soviet period, people got their reality from anecdotes. Now, that's not necessarily a clean, efficient kind of way of conveying structured news and analysis, but it kind of gets some essential texture of life across. So I'm not sure. I think that has a much better chance of getting through than any
it's
news
going to
information.
take time,
but
though.
Konstantin, am I barking up the wrong tree here? Is this a really bad idea, or has that got legs?
You got to understand, Russia is incredibly informationally closed, but at the same time, it's open. Let me explain. Russians have all the access to any information in Russian language they want. They get access to the same information I do. Every Russian has a cell phone. He can subscribe or she can subscribe to any Telegram channel. Install VPN, which is not illegal in Russia. I mean, it's difficult. It requires a few steps. It's illegal to advertise VPNs. It's illegal to, do certain actions with them, but it's not illegal to actually have a VPN on your phone. And with VPN, you have access to YouTube, to, I don't know, Facebook, to Twitter, to everything. And there are hundreds, thousands of professional reporters in Russian language who have fled Russia, who left in 2022, 2021. They do wonderful shows. I watch them sometimes. It's all needed for a Russian person to watch and to start thinking. The problem is not in the accessibility to information, or rather not accessibility. The problem is right here. The problem is critical thinking, asking questions. The problem is taking responsibility for their lives. Forget about the country. Russians need to start taking responsibility for their lives. What I'm saying, it's open to all information. Any Russian can get access. Well, most of them can get access to any information in Russian. What I'm saying, it's closed because they're brainwashed. Their minds are closed. Okay, a lot still support Putin.
Should we participate in trying to clean their minds, or should we just let their minds rot?
Well, let me remind you, Yuri, the best Russian propaganda in Russia and all over the world happened in, was it early August, when Vladimir Putin and about 500 reporters flew to the United States, and it was a red carpet, and it was the American president. Okay, some consider him the most powerful person in the world, greeted Vladimir Putin, shook his hand, and there was a military parade thrown in his honor. He was given royal treatment. American servicemen, paid by American taxpayers, by the way, saluted Vladimir Putin. He was protected by the Secret Service. Russian reporters were given visas to visit the United States. They all work for propaganda. Okay, there's no question about that, so we'll understand. But they were given visas. None of Russians who have fled Russia, 3 million of us are given visas to visit the United States. No, we're the bad guys to America. But they are the good guys in the Kremlin, okay? So they created all kinds of reports, all kinds of videos reporting from Alaska, and they created this picture perfect for Russians. And Russians were watching.
Mhm.
And that was the major event of the summer. And they were saying, look, Putin was right after all. He won. America is at his knees. At first, they were trying to get to us, strip our sovereignty. But now, look, Donald Trump is giving him royal treatment. Putin has won. Russia has won. Okay. So forget about everyone who's saying otherwise. We're seeing it with with our own eyes, right in front of us. Putin is in Alaska. He went in there. He was given royal treatment. He came back to Russia. He smiled. He talked a lot about that. He bragged, and Russian propaganda made him a legend for that. He's the Vladimir the
Tsar.
Great. Yes. How can we fight that? You tell me.
Well, and man, I love you, dude. Listen, one of the biggest things was he got into the beast. He rode in the car with Donald Trump, and that was
You know what was the next thing? He flew to China for that big summit, and he brought his beast, whatever it's called,
Aurus, the
whatever.
Aurus, yeah.
And then he did the same thing. He grabbed the Indian prime minister, and he got him in. And Russians were like, "What?
Exactly.
Look at our president. That's the new type of diplomacy. That's limousine, like the presidential car diplomacy, the beast diplomacy. And look, our president is in there. He's right there. Donald Trump, Modi, and Putin, 3 of them,
It's the geopolitical version of James Corden, isn't it?
This is the best propaganda there is, that can be out there, Now, Yuri, tell me how is there a way to fight that?
I think that there's persuasion, which is I teach rhetoric and public speaking, and when it comes to persuasion, there's 3 kinds of persuasion. There's persuasion of things that people know nothing about, and it's relatively easy. So for me to persuade my students about Russia is a piece of cake because I know Russia better than they do. The other kind of persuasion is to tell people something they already agree with. So if I'm going to come in and tell my students that the college should be free, they're going to be like, yes. So that's great. And the hardest kind of persuasion is to come in and tell people something they don't want to hear. And it is difficult, and there's ways to do it. And you have to explain that there's a problem that they're facing, that their current solutions are not solving. But I feel that the second kind of persuasion deserves attention, because people want, even though it's preaching to the choir demands to be preached to. There's a market for people who want to know, who want to have that information. That's part 1. And part 2 is we're losing kind of like the official point of view, because in America, all we have official is now Donald Trump. And there's no other, Voice of America. I keep coming back to that, but I feel like those kinds of institutions, for me, it's a different actually question, because for me, as a freelancer, do I really want to work for like Voice of America? I had opportunity to apply to go there, but I thought, do I want to move to DC and do all of that? Nah, I don't really want to do that. But I feel like there's a place for them. So I just was kind of wondering about your thoughts on that. But yes, it's difficult because Russian people are, it's scary to know the truth. And to some level, we're going to see this in America more and more. And that's going to be part of the challenge here. But there's a lot of people who want to know the truth. When we look at how many people, Donald Trump is president, but there's half the people that voted against him, and their market too. They also want to know. And I really feel that Telegram is just garbage. It's just so much garbage of all different kinds of things that again, this is maybe my American side, but I just I don't really go to Telegram. I go to like websites that I can see where they're coming from, because Telegram, it's all anonymous. Like it, we can just kind of surmise who are Z bloggers, who are government, but it could be all written by anybody else. I mean, this is just such an untrustworthy environment. I mean, I know Russia is a jungle, but come on.
Okay, good point. I agree with you on the propaganda, disagree on the Telegram, but let's concentrate on the propaganda. Now, look, you said let's create anti-Russian propaganda machine, right? Well, my point is it's already created. And if you create something out of America, that Russians will not respond to that. And they're not even responding to this news machine. I can't really say it's propaganda, but that's very important news outlets that used to be in Russia and then they left. ФБК, Khodorkovsky Live, Medusa, Дождь, of course. Out of those 4 outlets, they cover most topics that Russians need to know, and
But
Russians have access to them.
They're junk. They're total junk. They are
You
total.
think
They're
Дождь is
yes,
junk?
absolutely. I look at them as kind of vestiges of imperial thinking, people that got pushed out who would like to be on the inside, but they got kicked out. And so Dorst sits in Amsterdam and rains from there. And Medusa is kind of like, okay, they're, apparently they couldn't exist without major support from anybody else. They're kind of, I don't really read them either, but to me, and Khodorkovsky, I mean, talk about a man with an agenda. Geez, he just wants to be president of Russia. So, I mean, like, they're all biased to, and then so I find this very Russian language is such a suspicious space.
I've got another
Yuri-
take on that as well. I mean, you've got.
But I'm harsh because
you're quite cynical, of course. But then you've also got Makalnaki, who I think is great information, and you've got Alexander.
Yes, and I think the fact that Michael Naki actively raises money for Ukrainian troops is a very clear and easy to tell sign, because Dorsch doesn't do that.
And you've got Alexander Nezvorov, which again, it's very different information, and he is using a propagandistic medium and tone, but it is it's vehemently anti.
Nezvorov is one of us now.
I know, but he paints a very, very dark picture of Russia. But I've asked a couple of people who I know who've been in the West for some time who are Russian. I say, well, these are guys I watch because I find them interesting, right? And they'll say, oh, do you know what? I know what you mean. Like, that information is important, but I don't watch them regularly because it's too dark for me. Right? They're in deep opposition to Putin. They know all these things. They know the war's run. They know all of these things, but they just say it's too dark. And it may be correct, but it's too dark for me to consume, and it drags me down. These are guys who've been in the West for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and they're like, I just can't. It's too much. It's too much. I'll listen to Maxim Katz because he gives a much more, a much more gentle critique of reality.
Let me elaborate on that. The media outlets, the big ones that I mentioned, I see them divided into parts. Okay, one part is opinions, another part is news reporting. Opinions, questionable, I agree. Okay, news reporting is great. They find news that are significant, that happen in Russia, and they simply present them. I use this news to do my own analysis. Sometimes I use their shows to do my own analysis, and they point me into the direction. Okay, because Telegram is 60 or 70 different channels, and it's like a non-stop 60 feeds of news coming in, and there are gems out there. There's crap, and I agree with that absolutely, but there are gems, and you really have to know where to look. And the most important thing, critical thinking.
Let's go.
Okay, double checking, fact checking, and analyzing, and I find it very, very valuable resource for me.
That is exactly the phrase I wanted to say. That was going to be my response to this little portion we're talking about here. Is people in general have lost the ability to do critical thinking, critical analysis. This is why we see some of the lunacy. I know we have a Russian American here with Yuri, but I'm an American with a Ukrainian passport as well. In my country, your country now, the ability for critical thinking, especially on that far right MAGA world, has departed the building, and we just believe what we were told. It's why I gave the example of the security personnel with me, and he couldn't even believe it, and I've got him there on the front. It's the ability for people to critically think. So if I can look at a feed, whether it be Telegram or whether it be a news source, or I'm even talking on the phone to somebody, I still need the ability to critically analyze that information, filter it, document it, verify it, and then go forward with it. But we are in a lazy, social media driven, especially an era of education is not focused on as much as it was in the past, and that leads us to a large portion of society that just does not use critical analysis whatsoever, and social media takes complete advantage of that. I can give you many examples of seniors here in the United States, and this goes along with the topic, that absolutely believe everything that comes across their Facebook reel. And I'm talking personal relations where so many people are scammed. They believe everything because it was on their reel. So, Konstantin, to your point, critical analysis.
I will add to that. All you've said, put fear on top of that, incredible fear right now, and you will get Russian people. They rather drink vodka, because if you are sober, you start asking questions yourself, not anyone else. You start with yourself. You start asking questions. Why the hell? What's going on? Something's wrong. And right now, if you are in Russia and you walk out of your door, you see that a lot of things are wrong right away. And you start asking yourself questions, and you start answering, perhaps, and those answers are not, they're hurtful. You start feeling really bad. And it's much easier to grab a vodka and forget about another day.
I love
about
this
everything,
because this really means that vodka was the TikTok before TikTok. Before TikTok there was vodka. How to stop critical thinking? Just drink something or TikTok. Because in the end, all you have to say is just, "Oh, really?" That's where critical thinking begins. You just have to say, like this TikTok that says the Ukrainians are evil, to say, "Oh, really?" Like, people don't even ask that question. They just accept the information. And Konstantin, back to your point, I think it is very interesting to distinguish reporting and journalism and opinion. And yes, at its best, Dorscht and Medusa provide information, but there's very little assessment of the meaning of the information. And that's where, I guess, that's where we come in.
Well, you do the assessment. You start thinking about that. They give you food for thought, and that's how I find them. Okay.
I think we show people, hopefully, how to ask questions, how to wonder.
Yeah, and don't necessarily believe what we're saying. By all means, challenge us and critique what we're saying, and we will adapt what we think when better information comes along. I think that's
I
critical.
love when people challenge me, and after 3 live streams every week, I do usually 5. After 3 live streams, I turn the live stream chat on, at the second part of any live stream, and people ask me questions. And like, I saw one comment here. Someone said, Konstantin, right before the start of the war, he was on a snow hill with his son, saying that Russia would never invade Ukraine. And that's that's true. That's absolutely true. I did that because I never thought. I thought that everyone was saying that Russia would attack Ukraine. It was crazy, because that would be shooting in the food of Russia in the first place, shooting in its own food. And then I don't mind uncomfortable questions. There is not one single question that I cannot answer, or at least try to answer. And if you can convince me that I'm wrong, present me facts, and then I believe it, I think about it, then, sometimes I make mistakes. I'm far from perfect. Everyone does. So, that'd be great if someone challenges. Just when they challenge, I like people present reasoning behind challenges, behind questions,
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
a lot of what we have to deal with is listen, discourse is how we improve. Challenging is how we improve. The ability to say, I think I was wrong on that one, and this is the new information I now have. The ability to do that makes you a much more credible source. Unfortunately, we do not get a lot of analysis in the challenges. It's emotionalism driven by media that is already based. So it's a challenge to try to hone it down, hone it in, and help people learn, grow, and understand. There's a comment in my chat right now, and I'm a US senior citizen, and I watch seven different sources of info in Russia, Ukraine daily, and I critical think my way to my beliefs. You find that the lies are pretty corny sounding. So Zenith Dawn, it's just an accurate statement there. You have to still use your noodle.
That's it. And I got to apologize here. There's some bots in the and trolls in the comments.
Hopefully they're the ones contributing to the fundraiser.
Well, I suspect not. I suspect not. But some of them are coming in from Jonathan's channel. It's always live streaming this, and I can't get rid of them because I don't have control over that. So hopefully we'll weed them out a little bit later. But we just ignore what they say because it's really of no particular value whatsoever.
Well, with trolls, what can we do? There are trolls out there. That's it. We just ignore them. I mean, you can't ban every troll.
I've stopped taking them seriously.
It's really kind of a thing that people don't seem to take to heart. But if you're listening and watching this and you're seeing a troll, you don't like them, you can ban them yourself for yourself.
Yeah.
Take responsibility for your own chat.
Ever since getting annoyed at the very first troll comment, the one that really got for me was apparently it was a lady. I don't know if it was real or not. And she said, I've watched some of your stuff. She said, and honestly, someone with your teeth shouldn't be doing podcasts.
Makes no us, Jonathan.
That's all right. They're in my chat right. They're in my chat right now, calling me a one-handed nut job. So my mods are taking care of it, and I sprung this on them. And so, really, thank you to all the moderators. Moderation is so important. I don't mind people coming in and giving different opinions or different comments, but if you go personal, then that's out of line.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, on the other hand, that seems to be the pathway in the United States for social media stardom. You have to accuse, a French president wife of being a man, and then you get, now that's the level to break through. Or this Candace Owen character, I think I'm almost interested enough to listen to her because she sounds like she's coming up with the craziest stuff. And in the sphere that we live in now, crazy has like value of its own. Like you get certain gold coins for being extra crazy. She said that Charlie Kirk came to her in a dream. That's some high level stuff there. I don't think we can compare.
No, and unfortunately, when the example is led by the top, and this is one of the things I'd love to hear your two guys' take on this actually, because this is what I try to share on my channel quite a bit. Whether it's the United States or even some other nations, there's often a response that is very, I'm hearing an echo now, but I'm good with it. There's often a response that's very emotional, derogatory, name calling. And I know that's what you're referring to there, Yuri, and it comes straight from the top and then it filters down through the media. I mean, whether you disagree with the governor of California or not, his name is still Governor Newsom. It's not Governor Newscum. And, there should be a sense of respect in leadership, even if you completely disagree 100%. And the Russians are masters of it. They're masters of communicating on these high levels and can look you in the face and say, I hate your guts. We're going to do everything to destroy you, and flatter you at the same time. And that it's a skill, and we've lost that, unfortunately, especially in the United States. It's just
Dostoevsky.
disrespect.
I don't know. Konstantin, up to you.
No, I'm what can I add? It's brilliant.
I find that I sometimes have a hard time communicating with people who live like in Russia or in Ukraine because they are so political that their whole language consists of jargon, of different names for different things. And I'm like, what is going on here? Can somebody just name a thing? You're like, what's going on? So I think that exists in all language spaces where we have people who are like nerding out.
But they're not disrespectful.
That's true.
Typically, that's my point. And when you have a segment of society out there and they're listening, okay, well, but
I mean, are you saying I can't call Donald Trump an orange mammoth?
No, you can call him whatever you want. You're not the president of the United States trying to bring peace to the world.
So it's the power ratio that you're talking about.
I'm talking about a precedent is set by leadership in the world. And when that precedent, especially coming out of the United States, sets it as we're going to be derogatory. If you don't believe like we believe, you're wrong and you're an idiot. And I'm right about everything. And let's go ahead and reelect me in 2028 and give me a Nobel Peace Prize while you're at it. If that's the rhetoric that you push, then you're going to have a negative response down the line, and it's hard to stop it. And then when you move that to international relations, we're not on the same playing field.
And now you've got Norway potentially dusting off its navy just in case the US investigates, because
Venezuela is in real trouble. I tell you what,
didn't get a Nobel Prize. Let's welcome Christine to the stage here. Thanks so much for dialing in from Kiev.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and hi everyone. Christine here from Kyiv.
Hi, Christine.
And I will take this opportunity to bow out because I have to go and recording an interview with the Channel 24 in English. So subscribe to Rashkin Report in English. And Jonathan, thank you to you for this fundraiser, for bringing everybody together. And it was a great honor and pleasure to speak with everybody. And I look forward to seeing you in the future. Slava Ukraini.
It's a pleasure. Heroям слава.
Heroям слава.
And Yuri will exit the stage any moment now. Christine,
this is fun watching him find the end stream button.
he's gone.
It worked.
It's been a tough night, hasn't it? So we're not necessarily gonna. I mean, I don't know how tired or not tired you are, but it's been one of the biggest strikes, hasn't it, of recent times? Just last night. What's the mood?
Still the same, I guess. Still the same. For those who don't know, well, probably nobody knows, but we've been sleeping in the hallway for quite a while now, and so we are used to nights like that. And actually, like, I just closed the door at night when it got too loud, and my son was able to sleep through all of it because we have like a fan, a air humidifier, purifier that makes this like white noise, and so that's how we typically can sleep through most of it. Today was a loud night, and so I mostly can tell you before I read the news whether those were just drones or drones and missiles, based on the sounds that I hear. Whenever there are drones, they mostly come to Kyiv through the north where we live, and we live pretty up high, so we welcome all those shaheds here in Kyiv. So it's typical that it's loud here, but we just learn to live with it, to adjust to it, and to this way we can still live our normal lives. Yeah.
And that's one of the curious dissonances, isn't it? During the day you can go and have a hipster cafe and a nice coffee and a meal, and people go to their jobs, and that's that weird juxtaposition between actually normality in many respects and 21st century normality, and then this absurdity that's kind of going on, this horrific kind of absurdity. Even mobile phones. Now, I don't know if it was, I don't think it was you. I think it was Elena Trego posted recently that she'd been at a conference speaking to some like security experts, people who are living and breathing and watching the war, but they never actually used the air raid app. and they weren't quite sort of really appreciating this distance between 21st century technology and convenience and the madness of what you're seeing here, which is, something which is similar to, say, the London Blitz. This weird conjunction of modernity and say primitive brutality.
Yeah, we mostly don't have the air raid alerts, like the app on. I have a notification, but it's like without any sound because it's just too much. And again, they will be too disturbing, especially during the night. So that's how we maintain our sanity, so to speak. And when there are these attacks, so there are a couple of things that I always think. Yeah. So of course I always think, please, I don't know, whatever powers there are, protect us, and hopefully this will not land on us, on our heads, and we'll just keep sleeping. But at the same time, I think that it will not land on us, but it's coming for someone, and it's a very tough thing to face, to deal with, because you don't want it to fall on you, but you know that it will hurt eventually, most likely someone, a family just like mine, just it's in some other part of Kyiv. So this is not easy to handle. But on the other hand, we just have to also remember that Russians want us like depressed, they want us feeling miserable, and so we cannot give it to them. We cannot succumb to despair and all of that, and we just have to do what we can do to support the army, to keep working, support the army, and hopefully help finish this war. And this is why I'm here today, right? Because I think it's important to support this initiative and help our defenders, help us, protect us, shield us. That's our duty.
I am Russian. I'm not in Russia. I left after the start of the war, and I don't really know what to say. It really makes me cry. Please forgive us.
I don't hate all Russians. Maybe some people say that they do, some Ukrainians do, but I also know some really genuinely good people who come from Russia. Some of them, like many of them, raise funds for the army, for our army now. Some of them wholeheartedly hope that this regime will fall and Russia will change. So I try not to judge. I sort of followed your work and I know what you're about. So thank you for saying this, and it matters, and it's very important for us to know that people still care about us.
I want you to know, when I came to Tashkent, it was very difficult because basically my country chewed me up and spat me out. And I started getting Russians together, and for a few months, for 3 or 4 months, we were just organizing a support group for people like me in my shoes. But then I felt that that's not enough, and I started reaching out to Ukrainians living in Tashkent. And I started inviting them to our group, and many refused, obviously. But some came, and my goal is to get Ukrainians and Russians on one table, so they can break bread and somehow make amends.
So what I think about all of this, history tells us that we can like, I don't know, come to some kind of a reconciliation after generations, right? After enough time passes. But the first step would have to be what you just did. You apologized, right? I feel like many Russians, they do not realize. And until they realize, until they accept, until they repent, I don't think we can reconcile. But I hope it will come eventually. And of course, there are people who suffered more in this war than I did, right? There are people who lost their loved ones. I'm lucky I haven't. My husband, he's been called up. He's serving, but he's in Kyiv and he's not in the trench. I lost some friends. He lost many people in his brigade, but we haven't lost any family member. And so this is someone who hasn't lost a family member saying this. And I suspect that other Ukrainians who have suffered more might be of a different opinion.
This is what I
Jonathan,
stand on.
Yes, great.
I think that they have to take responsibility first, realize what's been done, take responsibility and repent.
Jonathan, we just witnessed something beautiful, man. And I hope that people that are watching this live stream and we'll see it later on replays. I've been since 94 working in Russia and Ukraine. And I know the sentiment on the front lines with soldiers and people that have lost people. And I've lost many, many, many friends. So just a powerful example there. So thank you, Christine. And thank you, Konstantin. That was human. That was beautiful.
Yeah, I'm sorry if this is not very upbeat. Maybe that was not how the stream was meant to go. But yeah, that's the situation on the ground, and that just, I don't know. I'm just trying to keep things real, and yeah.
Situation stopped being upbeat on February 24th, 2022. That was the end of all upbeatment, for, I don't know for how many long now. How much longer?
But I just mean, like to cope with all of this, we still have to find something to be happy about and something to appreciate. Otherwise, it's just too easy to go down this hole of despair, back to the same thing. And this is why you see Ukrainians smiling a lot, laughing a lot, right? Enjoying their lives. Because that's just what you have to do. And humor is a big part of this, making jokes, even about the war. That's just how we cope. That's how we are able to function.
That's it. And there are. I mean, I saw this interesting video. There was Mark Fagan actually on Ostrov Zmini. We actually took a trip to Snake Island, and I think that's interesting. To take that information, to take sort of that version of the truth, but to package it up in really quite an effective way so that you can actually get people to listen to it and pay attention. I think that's quite an art, and we need to use that. Now, not everyone watches Mr. Nevzorov, and he's extremely contentious in many quarters, but he is injecting a certain useful piece of information sometimes into an audience that, if you weren't doing that, they could be susceptible to Russian propaganda. I think Parnikov does the same, and this is how he describes it. He says, look, it's not for everyone. I don't expect many Ukrainians to tune in, because that's not, and I don't even really expect ethnic Russians necessarily to tune in, but there's whole space of the ex-Soviet space of Russian speakers that if you don't talk to them, then there's a vacuum there. They're potentially going to fall prey to propaganda materials in Russian language produced by the enemy. So you have to kind of take them on, and you have to fill that space.
Yeah, that's kind of reminiscent of books by Peter Pomerantsev, right? Yeah. And what he did, what his main character did, in the most recent book. I don't recall the title of the book, but I read both of those.
They're great books.
Yeah. So it's useful, and in this war, despite all of the technologies involved, right, we can still say that human potential, the people, are still the key resource, and both for Ukrainians and Russians. Of course, Russians have more people, and they are able to pay more to incentivize Russians joining the army, which we are not able to do. And we use technology to somehow compensate for that. But still, people are the biggest asset. And if we can, sway the opinion of some parts of the population, I think it's worth trying.
Absolutely.
And working with the minds, right? Working with the minds of people's minds and maybe hearts.
And then there's winter coming up. I mean, this is.
I apologize, Jonathan. Friends, it's becoming too difficult. I've been to Kyiv many times. I spent almost a year in Odessa, Kharkiv, and Zaporizhia. I can't imagine. I'm sorry. I'm becoming too emotional. I gotta bow out. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Well, you've been here for much longer than I could have hoped for. And
I was expecting to be alone here. I don't know what has happened. Why there's such a crowd here?
This is it.
Yeah,
Oh
but-
well,
but thank you.
The whole stream's turned into something of a group dynamic. So we'll go with it. But yeah, Konstantin, you've been with us
thank
for
you.
almost 2
Konstantin,
hours.
thank you,
and
brother.
Thank you
Konstantin,
so much.
I think we need
you so
people who can be bridges, and maybe you're one of those people. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll see you soon.
Thank you so much.
Бажаємо міцного здоров'я. Ми бійці батальйону безпілотних систем Black Raven 93-ї бригади Холодний Яр виконуємо бойове завдання на Константинівському напрямку в Донецькій області. Для їх успішного виконання наш підрозділ має потребу в пікапах для виїзду особового складу на позиції, евакуації, своєчасного підвозу боєприпасів, дронів та обладнання в район ведення бойових дій. Звертаємося до YouTube-спільноти Silicon Curtain та Джонатана особисто з проханням допомогти підтримати збір, а також до Car for Ukraine та Бандера Мобіль з проханням допомогти з купівлею, підготовкою та доставкою авто на фронт. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!